Good afternoon. Whether you're watching this at 3 p.m. Eastern or at another time, I'm really glad that you're tuning in to Alumni Connections. A. Philip Randolph Campus High School is a gem in Harlem. Soundbusiness.org is a program that provides a lot of instruction and guidance for high school students. The guest that I have for you today, Anthony Rodriguez, I'm really happy to have him on because he's somebody that I've grown close to, had interactions post Randolph with. He's been somebody that's been involved with FBI. So it's a real pleasure to have him on. Just a little bit about Anthony Rodriguez. He graduated class of 2010. While he was at Randolph and SBI, he served as the SBI stage manager from 2008 to 2010. Later on, served as SBI as a consultant and associate director from 2016 to 2018. Anthony received a BS in Business Administration from SUNY Geneseo with a double major in personal and professional communication. He's a certified project management professional, which is amazing. Congratulations on that, Anthony. Currently pursuing an MA in education policy at the University of Colorado, which when I read it this morning was new to me, so I'm excited to hear about that. And is the current position management analyst at the City and County of Denver?
Correct.
Without further ado, welcome. Thanks for doing this with me, Anthony. I really appreciate you.
Likewise, Cameron. Thank you for taking the time. It's a pleasure to be on. And I appreciate what you're doing for the Randolph and the SBI community. So
that's awesome. Thank you for saying that. It's something that I think it's early days yet. You know, we've only been a couple weeks. I think I don't know. I might be like 10 deep. You might be number 10. I gotta do the count. It's early days with it yet, but it's just amazing. I'm interviewing alumni after alumni. Yesterday, I interviewed Dr. Jamie Parker, right? So he's got a PhD. He's an amazing guy, has his own clothing company. He's doing like hair growth supplement. And it's just this crazy. And that's just one person. You know, another day, I'm talking to Trevor. He's an author, an engineer, a coach with his wife. Author, doing consulting around getting people's stories out there. Jasmine Matos is a nurse. She graduated not only from Gettysburg College, but from John Hopkins. And it's just, you know, the stories keep coming. Hassan Rose has got a little bit of a different twist on the story, not the, you know, the college path that we're always talking about, but he's doing physical training. And if you look at Hassan Rose, he looks like he needs to be in the next movie with Rock. Like seriously, he's Diesel. So every story is impactful and interesting, and definitely people that other Randolph alumni should be taking advantage of. Destiny Moore has got products online for social growth and all that. I mean, it's just amazing stories. So to that point, and I didn't even talk about some of the fun facts. So let me just say these because I think these are pretty cool about you as well. And I really appreciate you for sending them over. You're the first in your family to graduate from a 4-year college.
Correct.
That's a big deal. You studied abroad in Seoul, South Korea in 2013. And you're a self-taught web designer and computer programmer. And then you had some parentheses. I'll let you go into that and talk about that. And then following that up, can you just talk about what you'd like folks to take away from this, you know, once we've completed this interview today, what you kind of want people to walk away from this with?
Yeah, I would say, you know, 2 things, short and sweet. You know, I'm an avid reader, so I like my quotes and my punchlines and things like that. I would say to any of the folks listening who are kind of taking the same path or similar to what I did, you know, don't let school get in the way of your education. It is really, and what I mean by that is it's really easy for someone to come from a background same as I did and be really disengaged in the educational system. And I mean, truthfully, it's because the system isn't designed really for us, right? But you should not let that get in the way of your academic or your educational pursuits. You don't need an institution to tell you that your knowledge is valid. And especially in this day and age where everything is becoming digital and democratized, education, knowledge, and information is more accessible than ever. So just take advantage of that, and use it to the best of your advantage. And I would say, secondly, it's hard for people like myself to be in an institution, say like higher education, where you're grossly under represented. And what I would say there is you're going to face a lot of challenges related to that. And there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to deal with that maybe your colleagues or peers won't have to. I would say use that adversity, use that pressure, use people underestimating you to the best of your advantage as well. There's always a way to flip the script.
That's awesome. And definitely, I completely understand, and I'm definitely a product of not depending upon formal institutions to train me and provide the information I need to do well in my business. Because um, for folks that have heard this multiple times over, I didn't finish college, and I have my own business and all that. At the same note, you're a young man. You're incredibly well spoken. I think you have taken full advantage of the educational opportunities available to you and are continuing to do so. So I think both the getting the certificate on the wall, but also not letting that particularly be the limit of your education is a big deal, and a big point to take away from it. So I definitely appreciate that. So without further ado, let me get into the nitty gritty details of your Randolph story. How did you get introduced to Randolph? What was your first, sort of exposure to Randolph, and how was that transition going from middle school to Randolph? Where did you go to middle school, and how did you get into Randolph?
I went to school, to middle school in the South Bronx, where I grew up, on 170th, or excuse me, on McCombs Road. It was, I think it's middle school 82 or 232, they called it. They do change schools pretty often these days, or the names of them. And yeah, a lot of my friends were, either their plans were just not to go to school, or to just kind of go into any high school that would accept them. The options were not very, there were not a lot of options available in the Bronx as far as a high school that would prepare you for, say, a college career or something like that. So I just took it upon myself. I grabbed that big book that they used to have back in the day with all the high schools around New York City. And A. Philip Randolph was the first school in Manhattan, a reasonable distance from where I was living in the South Bronx. So I figured I could just get on the train real quick. I was very attracted by their college preparation offerings. I think CCPI and SBI were big drivers behind that. They just seem to have a few more extracurriculars and things that, my biggest thing is I wanted to gain exposure. My experience was so limited growing up that I knew there was just so much that I had yet to learn.
So you,
And
you
it
knew
seemed like
about FBI before you landed at Randolph?
yes. However, I didn't join until end of my sophomore year, early junior year. And I also have a little bit of an unusual experience there, because technically I didn't even have the grades to be a participant in that program. Like I was saying earlier, I was, I started off my school experience pretty disengaged and just not, I just knew that the system that kind of was surrounding that whole experience was not working. And, Thompson gave me a shot. And that really made a difference as
He's
far as
he's known
my,
he's
go
known for
ahead.
doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, I have to tell this every time I tell this story. I had a 69% GPA going in, to my sophomore, or excuse me, to my junior year when I met Thompson. He looked at my grades and just kind of shook his head. But my friends Javier, Gio, Albert were like, "Come on, give this guy a shot. He knows what he's doing." And that very next semester, my GPA shot up to like a 96. It was like pretty crazy. And I owe it all to the circle around me that changed. The people, the conversations that I was having more frequently about college, about, careers, participating in career day and seeing people of color who are successful in like either corporate environments or have their own business. I never had that growing up, and it really made a difference.
That's amazing. That's the best case scenario that we're trying to set up. So it fills me with pride that we were able to do that for somebody, because that's what it's all about. And I know you've come back and you've definitely been a part of continuing that legacy and tradition in the school. So tell us about Randolph. You're in Randolph. You're approaching junior year, senior year. I definitely want to hear about the transition, getting ready for college, and what sort of influenced your choices around that. I'd also love just to get a little context, like what was your favorite part of Randolph, what was your least favorite part of Randolph, just to give some of the tea on that and move the story forward.
Yeah. So just thinking back on it, it feels like such a long time ago. But I even told Thompson this during that interaction that I mentioned earlier. Told him I was military bound. That was probably the only option I had available to me. And just kind of to the point of what I maybe didn't like as much about Randolph, and I don't think it's specific to Randolph. So no judgment to that school. This happens in schools all over New York City, especially where there's a lot of people of color. But you have more military recruiters than college recruiters show up, and that speaks a lot to barriers and the opportunities that people have. One of my favorite memories was just getting to learn these new skills about just the production space, getting involved with a lot of the performing arts things that SBI offered. So I served as a stage manager for 2 years. I did a little bit of audio, a little bit of lighting. I was always that person that just wanted to try a little bit of everything. And it just gave me so much exposure to like the arts, and seeing people of color in the arts was huge and also new for me. And just kind of like expanding my knowledge. When I graduated from school, my alma mater, they like to refer to it as Jeopardy knowledge. And it's not stuff that you necessarily need to get a job, but it's stuff that you need to hold a conversation with people, which is a very valuable part about getting a job or getting a good career. And just building that well-roundedness. That's something that I really enjoyed about being in Randolph. And then obviously, we got to go on those college trips and just see what that life was like. And just kind of putting us in that space and giving us that exposure just gave us the opportunity to actually see ourselves in that kind of environment, which again is just so valuable and makes a difference.
That's awesome. So talk to us about the experience of, like, okay, now you're on the approach towards end of high school. I know you mentioned that the military what would be an option. I'm going live right after our interview with Veronica Watkins, who is in the military currently. So hats off to her for her public service and
Mm-hmm.
her contribution. But I definitely hear you in terms of like feeling. I know for us, even Javier, who I think is probably had a great career. I'm looking forward to doing that interview. Hint, hint, Javi, right? I think for me, seeing somebody not pursue higher education before they go into the military is a hard thing, because I know that the possibility of getting that college degree later on in life just gets more statistically difficult. And I know that
Yep.
you get paid more going into the military if you already have that college degree. So that's what I'd rather see for a high school student. So I can understand both the value of the option. Like, I can see a high school student that being attracted by the
Mm-hmm.
offer, but I can also see from my end of it as somebody that didn't take that route and may not want my own children to take that route. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, hey, back up. Let this person see and feel out their opportunities.
Yeah, and I have family in the military, so all due respect to people who make that choice, and those people are so essential to our livelihoods as Americans. But there's definitely a right or wrong way I think there is to go about it. If you're doing it just because you think that's your only option, I would say maybe give it a second thought. But if you're one of those people and you see it because there is more than one way to accomplish something. And if you see that as a path to maybe get ahead in a career, or as a path for getting your education paid for, yeah, that's a pretty legitimate opportunity. But you have to have that mindset going in. And I think what's important is just understanding before you make that commitment, what am I looking to get out of this, and make sure that, you know, throughout that process, you have your values and all that intact. You know, my aunt, she's a former Marine, and this is exactly what she did. She felt like she was stuck. She was living with her parents, approaching the age of 30. She signed up for the Marines, did a 4-year contract, got her tuition paid for, and immediately started working for the Social Security Administration after that. And, you know, now she's living with her family down in Florida, and her 2 kids and her husband down in Florida. And, you know, their life has completely changed. And it definitely, she attributes it all to that start in the military and the opportunities that it allowed her because of taking that leap. So
we know you ended up at SUNY Geneseo. So what led to your decision-making process? I think you
yeah.
on a few college workshop trips, so you got a little bit of exposure to campuses. What other colleges did you apply to? What made you make that final decision to attend SUNY Geneseo?
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because that school wasn't on SBI's radar until after I attended. I think I'm the first from Randolph to attend SUNY Geneseo, and I'm also proud to note that there's several other Randolph students that have attended and have graduated from SUNY Geneseo since. So that's amazing. For those who don't know, SUNY Geneseo is considered one of the top public universities in New York. And just going through the process, obviously, you know, the first colleges on my radar were the ones that we went to, the ones we had most fun at. So, you know, Gettysburg was one of them, did not get in there. But I also just kind of understood the economics of it. And, you know, I didn't have a lot of money. I had nothing to pay for college. So I just knew, like, you know, public colleges were probably going to be my best option just because of affordability. So I just started taking a look at the SUNYs in addition to some of the privates that I applied to, and very few and far in between. So I applied to Dartmouth, Gettysburg, Syracuse, and then almost all of the SUNYs, really. I applied to Oneonta, Oswego, and Geneseo, and I think a couple others. I'm just blanking. I submitted about 10 applications, Cameron. I was not playing.
No, that's great.
That's
what we want.
I was really just motivated to try to get out and just be in a different environment. I knew New York City is just hard to grow and build wealth. So just kind of wanted to get a start somewhere else, and getting that on-campus experience at a university seemed like the right fit. I came across Geneseo just online. You know, Google University goes a long way. And I just looked at the criteria. They had a really strong educational opportunity program, which is something that I needed to go for because A, they help you financially, but also B, as a first generation college student, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So that served as a resource for me. And what was really shocking was I distinctly remember people at Randolph saying that I didn't have a chance. That was the only school that I got into that gave me a financial package that was viable. And so again, for the people who are underestimating you, use that. You know, thank them for the advice. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to follow it. Trust your instincts. Take a shot. The worst thing that's going to happen is they say no. And in fact, Geneseo said yes, and they gave me a full ride.
That's awesome. Did you go up to Geneseo before you accepted the offer?
I knew I was accepted. They had an accepted student day. So if you couldn't afford the drive up to do that, you know, while you were applying, they had that as an option. So I got in the car with my 2 grandparents and made that 6-hour drive upstate and just checked it out for, 2 hours. So I didn't really get that intimately, you know, familiar with the university before getting involved or before like making that decision. But, you know, my options were limited. So I was like, hey, it's a university. You know, I get my meals there. They have dorms. I'm going to be good. And it seems like a pretty okay kind of environment. It's a very small town, very like rural area. I make the joke that there's more cows there than people. So completely different culture there, and just kind of interactions with people were very different than what I was used to in New York City, but just all growth opportunities. So yeah, I got a lot out of it, and I definitely jumped in headfirst with campus life, I would say.
Amazing. You know, one of the things that hopefully, and I don't know if this is part of your story or not, but having been on some of the college workshops, knowing what to look for, so you might not have had a long time on the campus up there, and obviously it was a long drive to get up there.
Hmm.
Probably had to head back down, that sort of thing. Uh,
Yep.
but how did you, when you were on that, do you remember going on campus and
Oh yeah.
did you,
I was front and center on the tour. I was not playing around. I asked, I think, all of the questions. And I was in their face, making sure they knew who I was. Because I mean, that's just a skill you need to develop even after college and throughout the rest of your life. And just making sure that this opportunity was really a good fit, making sure that what I needed was going to be there. So even though it was a short-lived visit, I think it was an effective one because I was prepared, and definitely the trips that we did with SBI was a part of that. Just getting that almost that training, if you will, right, to how to size up a college and an opportunity.
awesome. So you're accepted at Geneseo, you've
Mhm.
got the full ride, you're in. Tell us about arriving on campus and actually starting the adventure, which is college education at SUNY Geneseo.
Um, I would definitely say it was strange. The first I would say, and I'm sure that every person who has gone through this would agree with me. That first Monday after move-in day when classes start, it is just the most anxiety-ridden thing ever. Just seeing everyone just buzzing around campus, looking like they know what they're doing, and you feel like you have no idea what the hell's going on. And you know, even with the SBI training, even asking all the questions and doing the research, that's just kind of what it feels like. And then also just being underrepresented on campus also comes with its challenges and its interesting interactions with people as well. So definitely something that I would encourage people to mentally prepare for. But at the same time, do not let that get you down. To tell you the truth, it turns out no one actually knows what they're doing on campus. My adversity, it turns out, actually served me. I thought that was a crutch throughout my first 2 years at college. And it really hit me when I was in my third year. Things settled in. I kind of knew what I was doing. And, you know, I look over and I see a kid just like in tears because their parents cut them off of their allowance. And I'm just here like, I have 5 classes, 2 jobs, an internship, and I'm part of 2 clubs, and that's what you're worried about. And so, you know, I was like, maybe I don't have it so bad. I think I'm pretty prepared for this. And yeah, and you know, graduated on time, and with 2 majors, despite them encouraging me not to, because they said I was considered, you know, at risk of you know, not getting good grades or maybe taking that 5th year or whatever. But I was determined. I knew what I wanted, and then so I went for it, and I was willing to put in the work. And you know, again, I thank people for the advice, but I went ahead and did what I wanted to do anyway. And you know, I caution people with that, but if you know what you want and you have a goal, like no one's going to stop you from accomplishing that. You just got to make that decision to not give up. And that's what I did.
So what were you getting into? You mentioned clubs. I remember, I think you were in theater on campus, right? Continuing some of the production stuff, right?
Yeah. So I actually took 2 theater courses and then worked for the production team at the university for some time. I was a bouncer at the local bar. I was in 2 honor societies. I
You might not be able to tell from the shirt, folks, but this guy's he's got a form.
no, no, I was the smallest one at the spot, and uh, a conversation for another day, definitely. But that interview process for that job was a pretty interesting. I'll tell you about it later. But yeah, you know, I was part of a fraternity. And then I was also part of a male leadership group on campus, which also was amazing. We got the opportunity to lobby in Albany for educational opportunity programs for state universities, and we were successful in increasing that budget that year. And also just doing different kinds of philanthropy and fundraising and just kind of other things that are going to help you in your life outside of the classroom. And that's one thing that I would caution people. It's just like, you know, there's definitely a right and wrong way to do college. I would tell people to be careful. You don't just kind of coast through it and expect, you know, a job and a good opportunity to come through. You got to make the most of that experience. And a lot of that happens outside of the classroom, just with rubbing elbows with people who might be connected, especially if you're one of those people who are not very well connected. You got to work extra hard at it. And I think that was one of the biggest factors to my success today, which is just, working that networking muscle and just getting out there and being uncomfortable, but genuinely connecting with people and learning from them. And your world just opens up after that.
Yeah, I got to say that's probably the number one reason. I mean, there's lots of things that you can go into, and obviously different colleges have different things to offer. But I would say
Mhm.
the number one reason that somebody maybe shouldn't go and take advantage of a college education is because you're going to be unwilling to do things outside of the classroom. Then I would say, like, just go get your online degree, because
Exactly.
the whole point of a college campus is for you to interact, create those connections. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit in terms of the connections that you made at SUNY Geneseo. I know you're in Denver now, so I'm really looking forward to, getting through to the end of this story to see, and I know that you've been in a lot of different places
Mhm.
graduating. So why don't we continue on and keep that going? Because I really want people to hear those aspects of the story.
Yeah.
Talk to us about finishing up Geneseo, your junior, senior year, the stress of real life encroaching upon you as it comes. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, another unusual thing I did was I studied abroad the first semester of my senior year, and ever since I wrote my college application essay, I would go back and read it often just to kind of see how my mind has changed since. And I remember reading, like, I wanted to see the world beyond just my block. I wanted to understand what other cultures were like. You'd be really shocked to see how different a news story is about the US from the perspective of another country. And that's something else I would recommend to anyone who has the opportunity to do it. Please study abroad and experience a different culture. One that preferably one that is not so similar to American culture. You're going to get more in a semester than you would in a year and a half worth of college. I would say I learned more in that semester than I did in a year at
Talk
university
to us about
studying
some
abroad.
of the cultural differences in South Korea. Talk to us.
So I would get, like, the key difference there is it's a very Americans were very individualistic, right? We're all about being the hero and the cowboy aesthetic and all that, and just kind of like living by your own rules and that kind of stuff. Not like that at all in South Korea. I distinctly remember, like, raising my hand and correcting a teacher, and the whole classroom went silent. And my friend is just like, no, 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 do not do that. The professor's always right. I got into an altercation there with someone, and he found out I was just a year older than him, and just for that reason alone, that he was compelled to bow and show respect and kind of walk away. And I was just like,
Oh,
what the heck is going on here? But there was also, like, an interesting experience where it was an exchange program, so I was able to use my scholarship to pay for that experience, which, if you're looking at study abroad, I recommend those kinds of programs. And my tuition bill didn't come in at the time it was supposed to, and I'm stuck in a foreign country with no money at all. And so I was it was a big problem. And I remember that weekend I was on Facebook just trying to figure out what's going on around me, like, what's the social scene like in South Korea. And there was this group that throws parties and social events specifically catering to foreign students, as they call them. And so I showed up. They were looking for interns to help promote their party and stuff. And I was like, I'm an American. I'm kind of like loud by that standard, even though I'm like quiet by the American standard. But I don't have any problem shaking hands with people, approaching them, helping them out. And it was so successful. They actually offered me a job. And what was crazy is that they didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak a word of Korean. And this was like a master class in interpersonal communication, just kind of thinking of creative ways, whether it was like hand gestures or using technology to translate, or trying to get other people to broker conversations. But I was able to hold the job there to kind of keep me afloat while that tuition money came in. Thankfully, it came in shortly after, but I kept the job, and it connected me to all these cool people around the city.
That's amazing.
I was going to all these like nightclubs that like Americans would never be allowed to go into. So it was just a crazy experience. The food is amazing. And I still have to this day friends that I keep up with from there, anywhere in the world now, because it was an international school that I attended. I probably have a friend in some country there that can put me up, point me in the right direction, or give me some tips. And, probably that's more valuable than I would have gotten a semester of back home at the university. So again, I encourage people, study abroad if you can.
We talk about Thompson and I and folks, that have been in the SBI program. When we take the students on like a day trip or a 2-day trip, the fact that students can sometimes learn on those trips in 1 or 2 days what it might take a month to learn in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
just the importance of math, like, being on a campus and,
Mm-hmm.
talking to a student that is struggling with, paying for their off-campus housing and work study, suddenly budgeting becomes a lot more interesting, real, and precedent for you as a high school student. All the pieces of understanding resources, how you going to South Korea and you talking about that, like, it's like, sign me up. I want to go now. I've never been overseas, and I feel at such a loss. I really want to experience that. So it's amazing that you have that experience. And that's really when we talk about the opportunities that college can offer. I mean, you fully took advantage of it. So it's amazing that you had that story. All right. So keep us going.
All right. So graduation, things did not go so graceful for me. I had an internship that I held for 2 years with a startup, a market research firm in New York City. And I swore that was going to be my job out of college. They liked me. They said they wanted me back as soon as I graduate. That second year, finishing up that internship, this was right before I went to South Korea. They had announced that the company was liquidating, or so basically they're closing shop, and I was not going to have that job that I thought I was going to have. And so all of a sudden my options felt limited again, but that was on me because I put my eggs in one basket. I was like, I got a job out of college. It's my junior year. I'm like ahead of the game. Got nothing to worry about. Big mistake. So another key lesson there, always good to have options. It's like having oxygen to breathe. And so, I was just pounding the pavement, and then I basically just took and most college students end up doing this right out of school, especially when you don't have any marketable skills or experience. I took a sales job, and, I'm a good speaker. So I was like, all right, this is going to be a piece of cake. I did not like the company culture whatsoever. And I found myself just kind of spinning my wheels between jobs that were undervaluing me and just making me work grueling hours under some pretty harsh conditions. And so then I turned to building my skills. I could not go back to college. A lot of my friends who were in this situation found themselves trying to escape this by going back to school, which I couldn't afford that. I'm still paying my undergrad now. So I didn't have that privilege. But
talk to us a little bit about that, because you said I know part of the story was like a full ride. So how did the full ride not end up being a full ride?
Yeah. So what you think is a full ride, right? It usually never is. A lot of times there are, subsidized loans hidden in your financial package that you don't think of until after your 4 years are up. And then all of a sudden, the clock starts ticking on that interest payment, and interest starts building up. So I thought I got a no strings attached full ride. And I got and that wasn't the case. So it was a combination of grants, of scholarships, and a small amount of loans that were subsidized. And so they weren't accruing interest until I graduated. But having very little knowledge or experience of personal finance, I had no clue. I just, I wasn't saving as much as I could have in college. And I just took it as free money. And nothing is ever free, especially when it's from the government. And that bit me for sure. So, I'm back in New York City. I'm trying to live on my own. I'm working a job that did not pay nearly enough. And then now I have these loan payments due. And, I felt squeezed. And a
What
lot of students end up in this situation.
what were you selling at the time? I know you didn't like the culture, but what were you selling?
I was a recruiter for I was a technology recruiter.
Okay.
And so that kicked off actually a lot of my interest in technology, because I found myself able to really easily strike conversations with people about technology. And I said, well, what about, and I was seeing the amount of money people were making just learning this stuff. So I'm like, well, why don't I just learn some of this? And I did. And, little by little, I started applying my skills. But obviously you don't have that work experience on your resume. So it's easy to just say, hey, I know this language.
What skills were you learning? So I know part of the bio you gave me, and I know we had talked about this in our previous conversations, post some of this happening, was what you were learning and what you were doing. So talk to us about that. And then just keep us moving through the post-college story, because I want to get us up to present day.
Okay. So yeah, I'll try to keep it short. It started with just building digital media skills, because I saw that those were going to supplement any sales efforts that a company was making. Digital marketing and inbound marketing is becoming a huge thing now. I know you talk to, Trevor Cassavery speaks a lot about like Facebook ads and other forms of like email marketing and things like that. So yeah, there's ways to duplicate your effort beyond just picking up a phone and calling people like you used to do in the 80s. And it's always effective to have that skill, but there's also other things that companies are doing to get ahead beyond just having a whole sea of people cold calling. So I wanted to learn digital marketing skills. I got in with a startup firm to practice some of these skills, and I was an account manager there, so still doing the sales, but building relationships with people. I was able to build that business for the guy who owned it. And then eventually I got into web development, and I realized that I can make more money doing the same work working for myself. And so all those relationships that I built with those clients, I took them with me. And I was freelancing for almost 3 years. And that really gave me the confidence. It gave me the experience that I needed when no other company wanted to allow me that experience. And
let me just say that I say confidence is huge. Like that,
yes,
definitely been a game changer in my life. And as a guy that didn't graduate college and didn't have the certificate on the wall, when I got positions that allowed me a bit of confidence, it really changed the game for me. So I really heard you when you just said that, like that bit of confidence, it gives you, it propels you forward. Also wanted to give a shout out to Giordano Brew, who just commented, personal finance should be a prerequisite for all colleges, talking about something that applies to the real world.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought that was a great point.
So, freelancing, got digital marketing skills and web development skills under my belt to supplement my sales and interpersonal skills. I was actually doing really good at freelancing, and you know what? Your life completely changes when you realize you don't have to rely on a company to earn a living. And, when it came time to look at the next step in my life, I met a lady, decided to settle down, and we wanted to move somewhere that wasn't in New York. And so we ended up here in Colorado. It was a good fit, mostly motivated by grad school. And I wasn't worried about getting a job because I had my contracts. I was working remotely and I was earning income.
Am I mistaken though? I feel like you might have skipped over something that I talked to you about. Weren't you like down on an island for a little while or something like that?
Yes. In between the whole sales thing, I did take a job with an international real estate company in the Caribbean.
Yeah, just a small little detail. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, well, I don't mention it too much, but and the reason being is it was a lesson learned in understanding what your values are before jumping into an opportunity. And I didn't really take kindly to an American-based company taking advantage of local people and manipulating laws in such a way that are keeping people oppressed. And I didn't really agree with being caught up in that system, so I just decided to part ways, and that's basically where that went.
Let me speak to that for just a second, because I think it's really an important part of your story and many others, like moral and ethics in business. I was a part of a business call this afternoon, and the guy was talking about politics. I'm not sure why we weren't really there for that, but it was a older white gentleman, not unusual, talking about being oppressed by the government, which you
All
know
right.
really okay, but just this idea when you're in business, and the morals and ethics of the company that you get involved with are really important for your personal happiness, and it definitely plays in. And I think people that are joining an organization will be well served from that kind of lesson, and then taking that from your story, like understand what the organization is about and what their core values are, because
Yep.
you might like the job, the actual technical aspect of what you're going to do, but if you don't like the organization, I guarantee you it's a bad culture fit.
Yep. And I know sometimes people are in a spot where you can't afford to be picky and choosy. And for a few years I was not in that position. So I thought, all right, I'm just gonna put my head down and deal with it. But that wears you down. It
Yeah.
really does. So at some point it's always good to just kind of have a personal mission statement. Like, what do I believe in? What do I want to do? Similar to how businesses have one. What impact do you want to have on the world? And as cheesy as it sounds, it's a tool to use to filter out and figure out what opportunities really are a good fit for you.
That's awesome. All right, so tell us. So we got to the part of the story. You met a significant other. I'm assuming you guys are still together.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're still together. We're at home in Denver right now with the whole COVID thing going on. And she was in grad school, and I was thinking, I'm coming in between my whole freelance stint. I was also working with SBI. I did serve as the associate director for some time, and I knew that this is where I wanted to be working in, was education and helping younger folks understand how to carve this path out that I did. And so I wanted to get into higher education. And so this is my recipe for networking. So advice to people: it works like gold. I've done it several times and have been successful each time. I had 0 people in my network in Colorado, but I knew I wanted to work for the University of Colorado. I got on LinkedIn. I went and looked up who's in my alma mater, because that's the first sort of connection. Once you've been to a place people have been, you immediately have a connection with them before even reaching out. And then I said, well, what if someone who's graduated from Geneseo works at the University of Colorado? You can do all this in LinkedIn in less than 2 minutes. 2 results came up, reached out to the first person, and I did not ask them for a job. I did not ask them who was hiring. I said, I'm moving into town in a few weeks. I'd love to sit down, have coffee, and just understand what your experience is like. Want to hear from you about higher education, what you think about it, what you like, what you don't like. And this person to this day is one of my good friends. And she plugged me into a temp job at the University of Colorado, which I did concurrently with my contracts as a freelancer. And that led to a full-time opportunity, which led to me being able to pay for my college tuition. So I started, studying project management, applying some of these skills that I've been learning, and then just going all in and on the higher education space. And it also just kind of helped us offset the cost of tuition, because we had two students in the house. So that wasn't easy, but that really helped, and that was a really strategic way that allowed us to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish.
That's amazing. So now you're in Denver, and what are you doing now? How did what's was your position entail? I know that you
Yeah.
utilized your connections to get the role. And
Hmm.
I was asking what your significant other's name was.
Her name is Michelle. She's the executive director at a farm here in Denver. And she her field of study was like in agricultural studies, or sustainable food systems rather. I ended up working for the government, doing the same play that I just described to you. Essentially, we knew we wanted to leave Boulder. It wasn't a good cultural fit after she was done with her degree, and so Denver was probably the next closest thing to New York, in the state. And so we moved out here. And I just got connected with folks who worked for the city, and really good opportunities there. especially for folks who had a mastery of some technology skills. And they had some competitive salaries that allowed me to pay for my own tuition. And I didn't even have to worry about, getting that job that's going to cover the cost of tuition. I was able to leverage the skills that I built and the experience that I had at an institution to go ahead and take that additional step. So now my role is a lot more IT focused and a little less customer service interpersonally focused. But for people who are also interested in technology, I think it's actually really valuable to learn the communication elements first. You'd be surprised how many people work in the technology field and have no idea what they're building for their people. And it might be brilliant, but it's completely off base for what they might need. But being able to speak with people and ask the right questions and sort of elicit pain points from people, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I should build for them. And even though they didn't tell me this directly, I'm going to go ahead and code this in because I know that's going to help them out.
That's awesome. And the ability that you have to be able to do that is something major. I'd love to talk about a couple of different things. We're gonna wrap this up. If there's anybody that has any questions that are watching, I'd love to get your questions or comments. And Anthony, what are the skills right now? Obviously you're in the job market, you're taking advantage of government work. There's a lot of things that are happening in the economy, obviously with the pandemic and just with technology in general. What would you recommend to somebody, whatever career track they're on? What are things that you think people need to look out for? And then what I'd love you to follow up with that, is there anything that you're looking for currently, any resources that you're looking for, so that we understand how alumni can connect with you and help you, and if there's any other kind of alumni that you want to connect with, or any other things that you'd love to work with people on?
Yeah, sure. So the first part of that, sorry, can you give me that first part again?
Yeah, so just what skills should people be kind of
Yep.
focused on if they're
Got
currently
it.
seeking education or not?
So
job
yep.
work.
Thanks for the recap. So first and foremost, just networking. Get comfortable getting uncomfortable, approaching somebody, and get used to speaking about them, even if it's something, a topic that you might not be versed in. Be curious, practice curiosity, and people are very flattered by that, and they take to that, and it's going to open up doors for you. Technology is huge. I did say in the description that I sent to you, I think everyone should learn how to code, and I truly mean everyone should. Give me an industry, any industry at all, and I promise you there's some disruption that has or is currently going on related to technology.
So when you say, and let's break that down a little bit. When you say code, what exactly are you talking about when you talk about coding? Because I think there's a lot of places people could go, and things.
So there's a lot of different directions that people can go in. So we're running out of time. So what I would say is I'll drop my LinkedIn profile in the comments later. I'm happy to have an in-depth conversation with anyone who wants some advice on what direction might be good based on their interests. But yeah, there's so many different directions you can go with technology and coding. And it all just kind of depends on the industry and the job that you might be interested in. But every position could benefit from having some sort of coding knowledge, whether it's automating repetitive tasks, whether it's running reports so you can be data-driven, or whether it's building algorithms that will allow you to predict future outcomes, which is another interest that I'm kind of delving into with my education.
Yeah, I'll definitely, once you drop that, because I was trying to look for you, but I know the name is somewhat popular on and so I was having a little trouble finding it. So when you drop that, I'll make sure to include it in the comments. Why don't we go back to what you want everybody to take away from, and then and Gio just threw the Wikipedia up here for wiki coding. Just again, if there are you looking for any additional resources with things that you're working on right now? Is there any reason that you would love alumni specifically to reach out to you if they have some kind of resource to offer or share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently not running a business, and I'm not taking on any more clients for freelancing. So at the moment, I would say I would offer up myself as a resource, and you know, I have a pretty strong network on LinkedIn, and people often reach out to me and say, hey, can you introduce me to this person? Happy to do it all day long. If you want me to look at a resume, I'll do that. Or if you just want to hear more about, you know, my experience, you know, I'll do that too. Yeah, I would say, yeah, just kind of network super hard, and just kind of don't be afraid to reach out to people. So, and as far as anyone who I'm willing to connect with, if you're looking for anything along the lines of a career change, how do you break into the tech industry? There is an amazing program in New York City that I'd like to just kind of plug.
Yeah.
It's called Inclusion. The website is incl.us. It's a nonprofit that helps underrepresented people break into the tech industry and teach them development skills. So I spent some time with them there as well. So I'm not completely self-taught, you know. And one takeaway I would say is, for every successful person who claims that they're self-made, I promise you there was someone that gave them a plug. There was someone that helped them out, that gave them a hand with something, who may have served as a mentor. So don't think that you have to go it alone. In fact, you're probably setting yourself for failure if you try and do so. So just reach out to people, get as comfortable as you can reaching out to people and asking questions.
That's awesome. And I threw up the website here that you just mentioned.
Yep.
CL.US inclusion. So definitely check that out for coding. That's awesome. Thanks for providing that resource. Shout out to Malik, class of 2009, checking in. We appreciate you.
What's up, Malik?
With that, I'm going to sign off here. I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you, Anthony. I'm so appreciative of you doing this for me. I'm going to let you say goodbye and take us out.
All right. Thanks, everyone. It was a pleasure. Can't wait to see more stories and hear from more folks who have graduated from Randolph, class of 2010. Just good luck to everyone who's kind of taken this next step. And just remember, don't be afraid to pivot, which is not the same as quitting.
That's awesome.